I've been mulling over how I should start this video for a while now, and after much deliberation with my very real and professional team, we decided it'd be best to do it like this. Kasumi Yoshizawa is the poster girl of Persona 5 Royal. As a new incoming freshman transfer student to Shujin Academy, her stark reputation as an honors student gymnast extraordinaire grabs the attention of the protagonist and everyone around her. If you're here, I'm assuming you already have some kind of idea of who Kasumi is. And you know, the overwhelming positive response she's gotten, it baffles me. It confuses the ever-loving bejesus out of me, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I finished the game. So as a result, I made this, hoping to get my thoughts onto paper, thereby expelling her from my brain for all eternity. This video will be split into 3 sections, aptly titled Kasumi Good, Kasumi Bad, and Kasumi Fix. And, before we go any further, I need to say 2 more things. Thing number 1, this video contains
spoilers.
Let me repeat that for the people in the back.
Spoilers.
For certain aspects of Persona 5 Royal, especially the 3rd semester, especially everything pertaining to Kasumi's story. If you have not completed the game yet, please go and do so. I'll be right here waiting for you. Alright, cool. Now that all the chumps are gone. Thing number 2, spoiler! Unless specified otherwise, my points here apply only to Kasumi and not Sumire. Now, with all that out of the way, let's start with the good stuff. One of the best things about Kasumi is her persona, Cendrillon. Cendrillon, and what she actually represents for Kasumi and her story, are pretty neat. Although, I must admit, upon first impression, Cendrillon's summoning upset me. It wasn't the same as those other really cool, gritty, tumultuous, triumphant awakenings shown by other Persona users in the game. Everyone else in the game had to rip off their metaphorical and physical, yikes, get my boys some laces cause damn dog they trippin', masks to take a stand against society. The same society that put it onto them in the first place. For that reason, the whole magical girl, Sailor Moon thing was kind of a kick in the face. Or at least, that's how it seems at first glance. When we juxtapose the fairy tale of Cendrillon and Kasumi's full story, Cendrillon goes from a, look, I'm cool and pretty, to a, look, I'm cool and pretty, and a metaphor. This quote that I nabbed from the Persona 5 Royal art book sums up Cendrillon perfectly. Quote, "The intent with Cendrillon was, while she gains her magical powers from someone else and only pretends to be a princess, she evolved to become a strong woman who can stand on her own. However, Kasumi is still developing as a person when players first meet her, so her initial persona reflects that aspect of her character." End quote. With that taken into consideration, Kasumi's actual awakening later in the game becomes more meaningful. Her persona isn't the only cool thing about Kasumi though. She's also, cute? And her Phantom Thief outfit looks like Joker's because she thinks he's the spitting image of rebellion. And, okay, fine, listen. The only good things I have to say about Kasumi have to do with Sumire. Can I talk about Sumire just for a second? Please, Mac, I've been dying all day to talk about Sumire with you. So okay, the themes of Sumire's story work really well, okay? With all the self-acceptance coming from self-esteem issues, coming from an overbearing sibling, it all works. It's nice, it's good, it's clean, it's pristine. Her progression in 3rd semester is done rather well too. A character going from a complete, total self-esteem mess, who's running away from her past due to guilt and shame, finally deciding to face the consequences of their past, and deciding to live freely despite their shortcomings. That's cool. That works. Also, I have to say, Sumire's journey through Kasumidom is representative of Kubara's 5 stages of grief, which obviously makes sense because Sumire is grieving over Kasumi's death. We see denial for the first 120 hours of the game when Sumire is masquerading as Kasumi. The anger comes from Sumire's survivor's guilt, her self-hatred, her hatred towards Kasumi for being better than she is. We see bargaining when we have to fight her in Palace. And after just wrecking her with Michael, you get back into the real world, and she's like, "Oh no, I'm Sumire again." But as you progress through the story a bit more, she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm Sumire again." And you know what? I can hear your thoughts from the past. I know what you're thinking. And yeah, I agree. It is really disappointing that I can only say one good thing about Kasumi. But maybe if she were a better character, I would have more to say. That being said, I do have a lot to say about where her character falls flat. I'm going to focus on one part of Kasumi that I really don't like. There are plenty of things that I also don't like that I'm not going to talk about. Things which include... No, what I want to discuss is the largest issue I believe Kasumi has. Kasumi is uninteresting because the situation she's in and her stakes in them are unsympathetic. Everything she does and says leading up to her getting her persona suggests that she shouldn't have gotten her persona in the first place. And also, the first 5 stages of her confidant show no real character progression, nothing tangible at least. Interacting with Kasumi is like owning a dog that doesn't know how to play fetch. You throw out the toy, or the stick or whatever, sometimes it runs out. It has promise, it has progress, just a little bit. You have hope in your heart, but then it stops, and it turns around and looks at you, and it cocks its little head, its cute little ears, its cute little face, as if to say, "Did I do good?" Kasumi has 2 main things going for her. She's a recognized, whether that's nationally or locally or whatever, she's a recognized gymnast and an honor student that gets special treatment, despite her protest against it. Her sister, as we learn later in the game, tragically passes away, and it was her and Kasumi's dream to reach the top of the gymnastics world. She and Joker are both outcast due to their reputations, respectively being positive and negative. Her character traits are as follows. She is polite, dedicated to gymnastics, kind, calls you senpai, thin, but eats a lot, has a carbon phone, a gymnast, confident, bold, gymnast. You got it so far? Good, because that is all we have to go off of for the entire base game. Kasumi does not change at all, and whenever it seems she's going to, she goes right back to the same go-getter attitude. And hey, I hear you clacking on your gamer keyboards. Put those fingers away. I know there's a reason for this. I know there's a reason she doesn't change. We'll get to later. But that does not excuse her from being so boring. In order for me to care about this near-perfect acting, static character, there needs to be an indication that something is off, that something is wrong. And the conflicts presented for her in the game are simply not enough. The only thing that matters to Kasumi in this big, terrible world is gymnastics, and for some unknown reason, her performance has been lacking lately. She tells you more and more about the recent shake to her confidence throughout the first 5 parts of her confidant, which all roughly play out in the same way. You both start out by doing some fun, family-friendly activity, training, eating lunch, buying glasses for her dad, going to the batting cages. Her shaky confidence gets in the way, you encourage her, she thanks you, and vows to train harder than ever before. Repeat that 4 times and you got yourself a certified Kasumi confidant. This slump she keeps talking about is always dealt with in that same way. It's always the same formula, nothing changes. So, tell me something. What part of that is interesting? There's never any indication that she's moving past your slump with any kind of progress, and there is also nothing telling me that this is anything more than just a slump. And you know what? Everybody who does anything has slumps, Kasumi. How is your slump any different from anyone else's if you are not introspective enough to realize something else is going on? Maybe, just maybe, if you led with your sister dying, I would care more about your situation. But when you start from a position where you're just like, oh, I'm just not feeling myself, why should I care? The consequences of her failing gymnastics, other than her personal goals being destroyed, mean nothing to her, but they have so much to do with her persona awakening. It's baffling. Look here, her dialogue indicates that this is the main reason for her quote-unquote rebellion. But recall that earlier, I mentioned that she does not care for the special treatment she receives. In this scene, she makes it clear that she does not care for the school's validation. She's only doing this gymnastics thing to satisfy herself. This is unlike every other persona awakening, and it really doesn't work for that reason. Everyone else's persona awakening has to deal with the injustice that they faced in the past. Ryuji faces Kamoshida, the guy who broke his entire life into pieces, breaking his leg, breaking up the track team, breaking his dreams of getting a track scholarship so he could take some financial pressure off a single parent, all that. An faces Kamoshida, who mocked the attempted suicide of her best friend, and for months has pressed her for sexual favors to get that same best friend on the volleyball team. Yusuke faces Madarame, his abusive father figure who let his mom die so he could extort Yusuke's talents for his own personal gain. But oh, Kasumi isn't doing well in gymnastics, and the honor student status that she doesn't care about is being threatened due to it. She heard some nasty words from the vice principal, even though she's the one violating the terms and conditions that uphold her honor student status, that once again, she does not care about. Where's the injustice here? A pretty perfect pinnacle of all that is good in the world, who's usually headstrong, having a tantrum because she is unable to deal with her slump, is not worthy of the attention and awakening the story gives her. Let me tell you something here. Do you want to know who is also a pretty perfect pinnacle of all that is good in the world, who does have stakes in her own story? Her name starts with M, and she's everyone's favorite waifu, apparently. That's right, baby! It's Makoto Nijima! Yeah! Makoto starts out in a high place as the picture-perfect honor roll student council president and sits unwaveringly in that position because that's what society expects her to do. She only starts to reconsider when the same society that built her up decides to tear her down. And upon meeting Joker and the thieves, she faces her true rebellious self and decides to follow her own lead, and you know the rest, you know her story, you played the game. Does this sound familiar at all? It should, because it sounds a lot like Kasumi's story. The difference here is that we see Makoto failing over and over and over again. And she's introduced in a way that is an annoyance to the thieves and therefore to the player. She is rejected, ridiculed, and reviled by the principal, by Akechi, by the thieves, even her own sister. She has her honor student status used against her to do other people's biddings. And by that point, she is not introspective enough to see that this is not who she wants to be. We see Makoto kicked down from a place that once meant so much to her, so her awakening and subsequent redemption as a phantom thief feels earned. They do this in a month in-game. It takes 120 hours to reach that point with Kasumi. What else do we get from Kasumi in those first 120 hours? Well, we get plenty of dialogue with nuggets of foreshadowing for the big reveal in the third semester. And ordinarily, this would be a good thing. Revisiting a story to find all of those suggestive nuggets leading up to a twist can be incredibly rewarding. And for Kasumi, there are plenty of lines with a double meaning that the player would have never picked up on in their first playthrough. Unfortunately, all of this cool dialogue doesn't really work that well, and that's due to the fact that Kasumi is just so uninteresting. Now, I realize that this is a fully personal point, but it's something that I found when I was rewatching all of the Kasumi footage from the game, and I didn't want to leave it unaddressed. I think that suggestive foreshadowing nuggets need to be embedded in already interesting dialogue to be effective. And, as I've already mentioned, Kasumi's story doesn't have any stakes, so it doesn't hold my attention. By the time we get to the huge twist in the third semester, I'm already checked out. I am already turned off by your character so much that even the introduction of Sumire is not enough to pull me back in. And it sucks. It really sucks that the only enjoyment I got from Kasumi's story was in hindsight. Only in hindsight was her dialogue intriguing. If the writing doesn't grab a reader's attention the first time through, then you have not done your job as a writer. And you would think, right, that this character who wants to dominate the gymnastics world, who does not enjoy special treatment, who tragically lost her sister, would be interesting, but we have nothing to chew on. If it isn't already clear, my main gripe with Kasumi is that there is no incentive to care about her prior to third semester. The idea behind Kasumi and Sumire is enticing though, and it's worth salvaging. It just doesn't stick the landing. As a matter of fact, it falls flat on its face right from dismount. It's choreographed so poorly that the whole routine was doomed from the start. Gymnastics jokes. Kasumi's story does, however, tie in directly with another character's, and that character is the key to solving this whole entire mess. That character is Takuro Maruki. I've been holding off on mentioning Maruki by name until now, and I am very excited to start talking about him. This adorable Azathoth-wielding sulk of a man. Look at him slouch. His whole relation to Kasumi is based on his noble yet misguided idea that everyone can finally be truly happy if their deepest desires are brought into reality, a reality that he has the power to create due to his persona. In Kasumi, or should I say Sumire's case, she wanted to become Kasumi to quickly move past the grief and guilt stemming from her role in her sister's death. Sumire was one of Maruki's counseling patients, and may have been one of the earliest people to receive his good ol', hey cool, I'm gonna rewrite your entire cognition so that your past life means absolutely nothing treatment. Tried, true, and tested. Waiting on that patent though. None of this is news to those who have played the game already, but it is absolutely critical to understanding how we can improve Kasumi's story. Sumire is made uninteresting due to the 120 hours of her masquerading as a perfect pretty little pinnacle of all that is good in the world. The solution I propose, therefore, is not to get rid of Kasumi, but to bring Sumire more into the base game. And we can do just that by pushing Kasumi and Maruki's stories closer together from the get-go. Kasumi needs some kind of struggle to make her interesting, because once again, her whole, "Oh, I'm just struggling with gymnastics" deal isn't enough to keep my attention when I, the player, haven't seen her struggling, nor have I seen the stakes in her struggling. I also never got the impression that anything was ever off with Kasumi in the first place. Recall when I mentioned earlier that I recognize that there is a reason that she does not change at all in the base game. The reason is that Maruki is changing her cognition to keep her as a perfect happy human. You cannot make me care about a perfect happy human when you never give me the impression that something is amiss. And we can fix this by bringing Maruki into the mix a bit more. Seeing more of Kasumi and Maruki interact could give us a window into what's really going on with her if done correctly. Kasumi, as is, starts off in the game kind of weak, with her sudden, kind of annoying intrusion in the beginning, and her whole goody two-shoes display on the train. Instead of that, the first time we see Kasumi could be her and Maruki walking into Shujin together. That would establish in our brains a kind of connection between the two. On top of his duties as a counselor, he could also act as some kind of advisor for her. He already sort of does. One need look no further than the meeting with the vice principal. He's there in the room, encouraging her. Instead of Kasumi's first 5 confidants being family-friendly activities like baseball or buying glasses, there could be instances where, before you go hang out, Maruki calls Kasumi to go to his office. Joker's not above eavesdropping, or hearing convenient information at the right time. So, we could overhear Maruki evaluating the spell he has over Kasumi. As we see in 3rd semester, his cognitive altering abilities aren't perfect, and we don't know how good he was at using them when he met Sumire. Maybe he needs to call her in every so often so he can coax her back into her state of delusion. He's still working on perfecting his power, and Kasumi is unwittingly assisting in it. With this little minor tweak, Kasumi fans and I can have our cake and eat it too. We don't need to cut her out of the game or do any major rewrites. We just need something to suggest that there's more than meets the eye. With this adjustment, she can still be the same old Kasumi, but Sumire also gets to say hello every so often too. My whole secret agenda here is to see more glimpses of Sumire, since, as mentioned at the top of this video, the best parts of Kasumi come from her. Sumire is inherently more interesting than Kasumi due to her selfishness and grief. Her imperfections make her more human. With how tightly most of Persona 5 is written, it's a shame that one of the main selling points of the game is just so bad. I want to conclude this video by saying that I appreciate you for sitting through it. I know it was a lot to sit through, especially if you like Kasumi, but it really does mean a lot to me that you took the time to watch it. While I was sitting through the 3.5 hours of Kasumi footage, I took a lot of notes that didn't fit the argument here, but would make for an interesting spin-off to this main project. My plan is to make a sort of loosely edited, commentary-esque type video on those notes, so stay tuned. For now though, here is a lightning round of fun dumb gripes that I couldn't fit anywhere else in this video. Thank you again for watching. See you soon. Look at her stupid bangs, they go so far back into her hairline. How big is her forehead? Stop calling me senpai, for the love of God. You had a hunch? So you followed me to Sai's palace? And you just hid and waited the entire time? Excuse me? What if I left the palace? What if I had left that day? Would you have still been in there? Did you bring anything to eat? Dumb bitch, I could have easily gotten out of there. There is a catwalk that I could have grappled onto. Or, my personas are pretty strong. I don't know, I could have done that by myself. I didn't need you there. Furthermore, this apparently justifies us inviting her to our, hey, cool, we just killed God ceremony. No, it doesn't. She did nothing. Why do they care so much about her? We've only met her twice. Her sudden intrusion in the intro bothers me so much. Like, dude, I audibly groaned when I first saw her. I was like, oh no, she's gonna be this kind of character, isn't she? Because the intro is supposed to be like, hey, welcome to Palace gameplay. It's very different from Persona 4, where there's just like a memento situation going on. You have palaces now, everything's pre-made, you can jump now, that's cool. And look at our cool protagonist, he's so stylish, why is he wearing a cloak? He has people talking to him, they're a ragtag group of thieves. They just stole something, they're a bunch of misfits, isn't that neat? Oh, cool, he just fought this Minotaur-looking guy with a guy in a top hat. That's pretty cool. What? You can jump in the shadows and hide, and use a grappling hook? This guy's nuts. Who is he? But then Kasumi shows up and she kind of just ruins all of that with like, I can save you, senpai. It's like, I didn't need saving. You ruined the momentum. Joker looked so cool and strong by himself. I didn't need you to validate him. Everyone... This is so difficult. Why? Do you want to know... You want to know who else is a perfect pretty... And you want to know who... I'm not gonna say that loud. I've been holding off on mentioning Taruki. Taruki? As mentioned at the top of this video, the best parts of Kasumi come from her Sumire.